Welcome to Me and Technology. If you were tuning in, Dr. Taz, a wealth of information in the health and wellness space, was introducing herself, and she is going to join me once again here in just a moment. There she is. All right. Now we've
Oh
got
my
it figured
goodness,
out.
there you are. So weird.
So in addition to not knowing what day it is, technology is not my strong suit.
Not mine
So
either.
you were explaining a little bit to us about your philosophy, and
Yes.
I love that you talked specifically about how important gut health is. So I have just started going down this road with my 4-year-old.
Okay, good.
He early on had multiple ear infections, actually 10 ear infections in his first year. So he had a ton of antibiotics. And nobody ever told me the importance of probiotics with antibiotics. Can you talk to everyone a little bit about how important it is and what we can do for our children to tackle their gut and make them healthier? And in many ways, that will get them through this time in the middle of a pandemic and make their immunity so much more resilient.
I'm so glad that you're, talking about this. I think it's something so many parents don't realize that your gut, and especially the guts of our children, is really ground zero for their health. And if you don't have good digestive health as a child, it's almost a setup for having issues down the road as well. There are so many things, and this is where I love the Eastern systems of medicine because they already knew this. They were already talking about this, and it took research and science all these years to figure it out. But here's what we know. Your gut holds about 75% of your immune system. So especially in a time like this where we're all worried about our kids and keeping our kids healthy, the state of their digestive health is key. We also know that as much effort as we probably put into feeding our children like beautiful meals and organic food and all this other great stuff, when their digestive systems aren't working well, they're not absorbing those nutrients. So, all this effort is kind of going to waste. So the state of their digestive health is critical, and it's tied to the majority of what we're seeing in pediatrics today: asthma, eczema, ADD, ADHD, autism. It's all gut based. And so when you're sitting there as a parent trying to figure out, well, does my child have a digestive issue or do they not? I mean, there's some very simple tricks you can use and some questions you can ask yourself. Like, first of all, do they go to the bathroom every day? Is it an easy going to the bathroom every day, or is it forced? So many kids won't go every day, especially as they get older. They'll start skipping around, and we have trouble tracking it better. Do they complain of stomach issues? Like, are they having belly pain? Do they bloat? Do they say this food hurts my stomach? Those are all kind of your clues. And then the last one I love, and this is straight from Chinese medicine, but look at their tongues. Like, if you stick your tongue out, for example, and look at their tongue, you look for a lot of yellow coating or white coating on their tongue. That's another clue as a parent that they might be having a lot of digestive issues. That's an old trick from Chinese medicine. That's how they picked up digestive problems. And then from there, you can talk to your doctor about it or do any testing if you feel like that needs to be done. But their gut health is number one and is key. Absolutely.
I love that you also touched on the fact that when it comes to behavioral issues, my son was complaining a lot about his stomach, and I just switched him off of dairy. He
Yeah.
wasn't eating a ton of dairy anyway, but he just drank so much milk. That
Yep.
made a huge difference behaviorally. But somebody just asked here in the viewers how much of a dosage of probiotics for them. So I started him on a probiotic as well.
Yeah.
Did my research. There are so many different brands. I encourage people to look into them, but talk to me a little bit about what we should be giving them.
And I love probiotics, but here's the catch with probiotics. You want to make sure you have a good quality product, right? Because we're finding that so much of the stuff on the shelf isn't really what it says it is. So you want to look at that label, make sure it's clearly labeled. You know what strains are in it. Look for seals, like the good manufacturing seals, to make sure you have a high quality product. But the average dose for kids that's safe is around 5 to 10 billion CFUs. They're measured in colony forming units. You'll see that CFU sign on the bottle there. So that's about a good average dose. Older children, I would say probably after 12, could go up to 20 billion, but 5 to 10 is probably where you want to be. And when you're looking at that label, here's what kids need. They need something with lactobacillus bacteria, so you want to make sure it says that on there. And they need bifidobacteria because those two families of bacteria help to wipe out something called candida, which is an epidemic in kids. It is in our family. I've seen it in so many kids in the office, and that really triggers a lot of this behavioral stuff you're talking about. along with just depletion of their energy and a change in their immune health as well.
And Arts in Action is asking, is eating Greek yogurt every day enough? Can we get that kind of probiotic through food?
So that's an excellent question. But again, a lot of children, because they have candida, have a dairy issue. So you could do the Greek yogurt if it's your only source of dairy that day. Absolutely, you could do the Greek yogurt. You may still not get to the 5 to 10 billion units that we're talking about, but you'll get some. If your child has a dairy issue, we probably want them to be on a probiotic. And like you were talking about antibiotics, you know, if your child is going on an antibiotic, then the Greek yogurt's not going to be enough. You really want to take an additional probiotic spaced about 3 or 4 hours from your antibiotic.
Why do you think, oh, here's my little guy. Hi, buddy. Can you, yeah, can you go upstairs and ask Daddy if you will? You will. Go ahead. Go upstairs. I promise. I promise.
Oh.
Welcome to working from home.
Exactly. I hear you. My 12-year-old will do that. She'll walk right in and sit down and be like,
you can give me a hug. Come here. You want to say hi? And now, behaviorally, can you say hi to Dr. Chaz?
How are you, sweetheart? Look how handsome you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead upstairs, and I promise you, he'll go pick one. And I've noticed a big difference now that we've made those small changes. And specifically with the dairy, but I was really curious also when it comes to just a regular diet and why it's become, oh wait, someone's asking, should it be taken before or after meals when it comes to probiotics? Oh, thank you.
So I don't think it matters as much. That's not one that you have to be that specific about. A lot of people say to take it before, but get it in. I know so many patients get really great stuff and then just get to do it. Just get it in. It doesn't matter so much when you take it.
Okay. When it comes to the diet, I'm just so curious why this is an issue now. I mean, when I was growing up, I was eating bologna sandwiches. No one I knew had allergies to anything. I ate junk most of my life. Only when I got into my 30s did I really focus on health, and I am extraordinarily healthy now, and hopefully that will pay off. But why is this such an issue with our children these days?
You know, there's so many theories, and I think that's such an excellent question. And some of the theories are we have more environmental toxicity than we had in the past. We, as the maybe junk eating moms of the 80s and early 90s, may have had a uterine environment that couldn't provide our children with what they needed in terms of setting them up for later in life, because we're finding there's so much with what happens just in those first 9 months, and that kind of research incredible and will give us all guilt, but this is not about having guilt. This is more about trying to understand what to do. I think that, you know, there's a debate on the medication usage, overusage of medication, both during delivery and during the first few years of life, that disrupts the microbiome or the gut bacteria. And then there's food manufacturing, because food manufacturing has continued to shift in a direction where some of even our healthy foods don't have the nutrients they used to have, very high load of toxins and pesticides. And so all of that, you mix it all up along with, you know, very schedule, you mix it all up together. The formula for that disruption. So I think that is why our children today are having so many of these issues, and a lot of them are stemmed in inflammation, and all of them gut. So gut is like ground zero. So.
I have done so much research on this because the microbiome is something that I've looked into in so many different ways because of his birth and all the medications that they're giving us now. The guilt that you talk about is something that's why I really wanted to discuss this today, because a lot of parents just don't know. For some reason, pediatricians aren't telling us, OBs aren't telling us. So I didn't know that he's not supposed to have that many antibiotics. If the doctor's prescribing him that, that's just what you expect is okay. So I think this information is so valuable. I also wanted to ask you about anxiety in children, because right now they are experiencing it not just because of their whole lives being put on hold, school and friends and all of that, but our anxiety, which is really difficult not to project because we're in the middle of the pandemic with them. Can you give us some advice on how to sort of shepherd them through this time?
Oh, I would love to. I mean, I've been really worried about this, honestly, especially, I saw my own son who is the class clown, has a joke a minute, is full of life. And during Zoom school, like literally, it's like the lights went out and his teachers are texting me and like, hey, is everything okay? Are you sure things are home? And it was just like he lost his community, right? He lost his like vibe. And it was really sad to see, So I feel for all of the moms out there dealing with this. Now, let's talk about this because we can break it down into a couple of different parts. So, first of all, there's just recognizing anxiety in your children. Anxiety in the kids are different than you and I. You and I will have a conversation and be like, I'm really anxious, I'm feeling really stressed. We may talk about it. They can't verbalize it that way. Instead, what you're going to see, trouble sleeping, a change in attitude, too much, you will also see, sort of dramatic responses to things. And other already trained. These are all your subtle clues, your subtle signs that your child might be anxious. So that's one way to recognize that they're dealing with it. Then the next step is, what do you do once you recognize it, right? So I think it's still really important to make sure your children are getting plenty of exercise, getting outside, connecting to their community, whatever community that is, and whatever you can create. Even if it's a driveway play date or a drive by something, if you're concerned about thing, or meeting up with at least one person to have that interaction. I think all of that's important. There are also so many fun activities you can do with your children. Like have them color, have them write about it, have them tell a story about it, have them act it out, and that's one way for them to get it out of inside their system and out, out loud. And then from a sort of supplement nutraceutical standpoint, we know that magnesium, low dose of magnesium, like 25 to 50 milligrams, can be incredibly calming when we're stressed and we're anxious. It works for us as well. And we know that there's something called that helps a lot. And then I also love using essential oils. I played much with those with children, but when it's an easy using a little bit of vetiver or sandalwood oil, you can rub it on the wrist, back sides of their nose, just kind of a little bit. But the third part to all of this is us, right? There's an incredible mom-child connection. And again, this is what my practice was founded on because I was so enthralled by Chinese medicine. And they would never separate the health of a mom and child. They didn't believe in it. If you treat the mom, you've got to treat the child. If you treat the child, you have to treat the mom because those two units are closely linked. So you brought up our anxiety. How we create anxiety in our children because they're literally feeding off of us in any given moment. And so it's really important for us to know us, right? Like how we're responding, how we're handling things. Do we have enough time for self-care so we can walk into the situation and be able to be fully present and take care of these guys? I love helping people understand who they are. So on my website, moms out there, like take the mom type quiz. There's a whole quiz on trying to understand what your mom type is and what your child type is and how that dynamic may play together. And I can give you a quick example. Like I'm a trailblazer according to so my emotional response is anxiety. My children are different according to this. So I have one that's a warrior. Her emotional response is anger. So you got someone who's going to respond with anger the minute I tell her something. I get anxious. So we've got this weird push pull of anxiety and anger, whereas the other one's more of a protector. He's just going to worry and a completely different dynamic. Here I have to go like, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Let's have a chat, and like actually do an activity to pull it out of him. So I think understanding who you are, understanding who your children are, putting these tools in place is a way to manage anxiety in our kids. And this is a super challenging time, as I'm sure you've experienced as well.
I think that that's something every parent needs to face, that it's okay to take care of yourself. You don't have to feel guilty about it. And I know that if you get an extra hour, like I could have sent my son outside and not have him around, but he just really wants to be close to me. So I put him in the other room so he watches the show, and then sometimes he'll pop in here. I mean, that's what I think is helped me to release some of whatever both of us need, and that comes to the mother and the child health together.
Totally.
Someone was just asking because they just joined in what today's topic was. Thank you. I'm joined with Dr. Taz. She is a wealth of information in the health and fitness or health and wellness space, and we've been just talking about our children and how we can really help them through this troubling time when it comes to not just their physical health, but also their mental health and their anxiety of what they might be dealing with. I loved on your Instagram that you've really been talking also about the health impacts of racism.
Oh, yes.
And how it is not only devastating to our society, but it's devastating to our health as well. Talk to me about that.
So we see this play out in the hospitals and the exam rooms every day. But, when you think about this topic, it's very important to understand that there is racism even in medicine, and there is bias even in medicine. So oftentimes certain populations don't get the quality of care that another population may get, that they are more whether for whatever reason it's lack of access to good food, lack of access to medical care, lack of access to medicines, period. And so they simply don't get the same quality of care, and therefore they carry around this health burden that many people will walk in and say, oh, they're a problem, right? They'll generalize they're a problem. So there's that bigger structure that we need to wrestle with and deal with that is very overwhelming when I sit back and try to think about it. Like, how do we solve this loop? And, so many people have tried, and we continue to try to bridge that gap. But I think the bigger issue and the more intriguing issue to me is that what racism does to a person, just like sexism for us, but racism maybe even more so, is it creates a low-grade state of chronic stress in the body. And that chronic stress then multiplies with every hit or every insult. So first, you understand that you don't fit in and you can't sit at the lunch table with these kids because they don't welcome you. You grow up and you realize you're not welcome into the boardroom for whatever reason. But this is a low-grade state of inflammation that crescendos and crescendos and crescendos. And inflammation in the body will then in turn present in different ways. So it presents as cardiovascular disease. It presents as hypertension, a higher risk of stroke, diabetes. When I was doing my medical school rotation, this brilliant endocrinologist talked about diabetes as being a disease of sorrow, when the body is like reacting against itself, upset with itself, upset emotionally. So many of these diseases, and again, the Eastern systems of medicine, which I'm trained in, talk about these, but they talk about how there's an emotional undercurrent and a generational undercurrent to many disease processes in the body. So many people, African Americans in particular, are walking around with generations of trauma, literally within their cells, within their souls, and that they're kind of entering the planet, the earth, with a low-grade level of inflammation. And then you add on the access to care, the access to food, the access to medicine, whatever other challenges they may have in their journey of life, and they're set up for disease. So when we talk about racism as a public health crisis, it is helping the community that needs the help, bringing them the resources they need. It is helping them understand the psychological and emotional trauma of what they are going through, and of also what their families may have gone through, and respecting and understanding their story. But then it's also changing the rest of us, right? Like, what is our bias? How do we perceive things? Do we participate in this in any way? Like holding the mirror up to ourselves and saying, well, what can I do to maybe change this? And I as a physician, like, is there something I can do to make a difference and to make sure I'm a part of the solution and not a part of the problem? So it has existed just as it exists for women. Women have been gaslit. Women's health issues have been gaslit for a really long time. But I think, it's really important to understand that racism is not just a political issue. It is not just a cultural issue. It is actually a medical issue. And my call, along with many other really brilliant colleagues, has been that this is a public health crisis. And if we're going to tackle it, we can't leave it to the government and kind of set back and be like, okay, they're going to put some policy in place and everything's going to be okay. It's really got to be a concerted effort between parents and helping them to bridge that divide when it comes to their family and who they invite into their homes, helping teachers, helping doctors, helping all of us, kind of sit at the table and say, this is how we're going to get rid of this. And it may take 50 years and it may take 100 years. But hey, we're going to try to undo the psychological trauma and the damage of the last, however many 100 years that have happened for this to take place. And it's in every culture. I'm in an Indian family, and I can tell you flat out that we've got racism within our community and within our family. There's a gradient of color that's more respected than others. There's sort of this condescending look at another race or another culture, So it's there, it's everywhere. And we all have to hold up the mirror to ourselves and be super honest and brutally, revealing of like, this is where we've gone wrong and this is what we can do differently. And I think every system, including medicine, is a part of that conversation.
That's so fascinating. And especially the generations of trauma. Are there ways to improve your health when you have been from generations of trauma, whether it's racism or abuse or whatever it is that might be in your spirit, your heart, and something that you're struggling with? What are some ways that you can heal yourself, either through food or exercise or whatever it is?
Such a great question. And this is a topic I'm incredibly passionate about. I did a TED Talk about 2 years ago, I believe, on generational trauma in women and how we disempower ourselves because of the memory and the history of disempowerment that many of our mothers and grandmothers have gone through. And it applies to this scenario as well. But the point of my TED Talk and the point today is that the power is in our own hands. We can rewire, we can change our chemistry, we can change the effects of generational trauma by doing a couple of things, but they have to be consistent and they have to be with a lot of intention. Yes, we want to feed ourselves, the good food, the nutrient-rich foods. It literally brings us up a vibrational level. So yes, we want to do that. A lot of plant-based foods, drinking lots of water, all those things in the nutrition world that you guys have probably already heard maybe too much so at this point. But I think the part of the story that gets missed beyond just health and wellness is the rewiring and how we have the capacity to rewire our brains, to rewire our emotions, to always kind of ascend that emotional ladder. And the way to do that is to begin with some kind of mindfulness routine. It doesn't matter which one. You just have to pick it. And if you talk to the great energy healers and sort of the people that are in this world, they're like, you just need 20 minutes. If you can find 20 minutes in the morning or maybe 20 minutes at night and pick a routine to rewire and reset your energy, and you do that every day for 3 to 4 weeks, you will shift your consciousness and how you think and how you feel in a positive direction. And as a medical doctor, you'll lower cortisol and you'll lower the inflammatory response. And so that could be 20 minutes a day of writing. You open up a journal and you just write. And it doesn't matter what you write. It could be blah, blah, blah. I don't like this. I don't like that. It doesn't matter. You just write. But what you're trying to do is dump out the emotions that many of us are carrying around on any given day. If you hate writing and you're someone that's like, oh my gosh, don't make me write, this is the last thing I want to do, well, then you can listen to guided imagery meditations. That's when someone's talking to you and walking you through a path to calm your nervous system down and to relax. And it's probably a great intermediate step before you get to meditation. Even I have trouble with meditation because my brain's always running. But meditation, of course, but you have to work your way into meditation, starting with 3 minutes, then maybe 5 minutes, then 10 minutes until you can get to that 20 minutes. So those are all things that you can do very easily at home. Prayer is a big one for many people, right? So returning to your roots of prayer, we all have, we all need, I'll say, some sort of spiritual compass, to help us when we're going through trauma and processing even the trauma of our ancestors. So I think prayer is incredibly important too. After that, there are things that are maybe more appointment based, right? So things like acupuncture, massage, meeting with people, counseling, therapy, grief therapy. These are all things. Hypnosis is amazing too, because it'll take a trauma and it'll reset it and kind of put it in its proper context so that you don't forget it. The point is not to forget, but the point is to put things in a context where they don't do damage to the body and they don't do damage to your soul. So really getting that routine down, I think, is key, and we can rewire ourselves. And then when we do that, we're so much more empowered to then impact another human being or to make a change in the world or to really be a force of good rather than another noisy voice and kind of like, well, this is wrong and that's wrong. So I'm a huge believer in rewiring. I've seen it happen in my own life because There's trauma within our family as well. And I have been amazed at what unfolds when we turn inwards and we fix ourselves and we then move forward. So it is possible. And at the end of the day, it seems like, well, we can't do anything and all that stuff's already happened. But actually, that's not true. We have incredible power in our hands to change exactly what's going to happen next. And that's really what everybody needs to hold on to.
It's so important that you point out meditation is not the only path to that. I've struggled with meditation for so many years. My mind constantly goes, as you point out, and you are the expert. I would have thought that you would fall right into it. I use the excuse that I don't have time. I can't sit down. If you schedule it, put it into your calendar, or wake up 20 minutes earlier, anything, that it doesn't have to be that seated guided meditation that can be so difficult, that it can be something as simple as writing your thoughts or just giving yourself some time to focus on yourself. And I love that it's worked for you. It's really inspiring me to recenter myself in that way, because I think during this time, especially when you have little kids, you really don't want to focus on anything else but them. But it's so important. And I hope that our viewers who have been watching think about and rewatch this and take some of these lessons from Dr. Taz, because it has just been incredibly educational to me and informative. And let people know where they can see you, follow you, watch you, everything like that before we go.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I'm very active on Instagram, and my handle is Dr. Taz MD. And then my website, drtaz.com, spelled out, has lots of resources on there. And I have a podcast as well. It's Super Women Wellness, and it's all about a lot of what we talked about today, trying to stay superpowered as women. We're responsible for so much, and trying to put all those pieces together can be overwhelming. But again, we come first, because when we're not present, everything else around us falls apart. So those are probably the 3 best places to go.
Dr. Taz, you are so wonderful. Thank you so much. It was a much needed boost on this Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever day it is.
Wherever we are.
Thank you.
Well, so good to see you. Take care.
So good to see you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.